Thank you very much for coming. It's really nice to see so many people here tonight. My talk tonight is going to be about a perspective that might be a little bit new for some of you, maybe many of you. It's about actually genuinely focusing on your strength rather than weaknesses in order to build the best potential and your unique potential that you could have. My name is Pernilla Andersson. I work at Verisure Innovation as a software test manager. And I would just like to start off by giving you a little bit about myself before we move into the presentation. I'm 41. I have a husband. I have 2 kids, a daughter of 9 and a son that is turning 6 next week, actually. And I also have a sister that shares my passion for leadership, and she's sitting there. When I graduated high school, I wasn't really giving a lot of thought to what I was about to do next. It was from the start quite obvious for me that I would move into some kind of techie world and some kind of techie education. And programming seemed, at the time, this was 96, as a very good choice, both because it was interesting and a lot of things happening in that area, but also because there were a good job opportunity. So I started off at LTH in the program Master of Science with a focus on computer science. After my exam, I got my first job at a company that was by that time called Sony Ericsson, a joint venture between Sony and Ericsson. And I got into different kind of positions, but mostly within the field that I'm actually still within, and that is test. Quite soon I realized that I was very passionate about certain things that connected to leadership. I was very much focused on building strong teams, building teamwork, networking, communicating, and building trust within organizations, but also the strategic discussions. So quite early I started to focus on getting roles where I could have that approach. After about 10 years, Sony Ericsson was then fully a subsidiary of Sony. And that meant that the company was turning into more of a Japanese company, which was obviously quite challenging, but also a very good learning. And I stayed in that company in total, for over 15 years. And after that, I realized that it was time to take out a new direction and start off with something completely new. So from last December, I'm working at Verisure Innovation, 2 blocks away from here, as a software test manager. Just a little bit about Verisure. I didn't know that much about the company before I started off. We are the biggest alarm provider of connected alarms in Europe. And that means that we have approximately 3 million customers. And we also have a lot of employees working in different fields in 14 countries, over 15,000 people. Our customer base is growing quite rapidly with a 2-digit from year to year. And here in Malmö, we have a very big focus on development, both software development and more firmware and hardware. So we are about 200 people working in system engineering, development, testing, architecture, and so on. One thing that I think is really cool with Verisure is that we have the end-to-end perspective, which is not that often you find in companies nowadays. But we have the development from hardware up until firmware and the backend services, and the networking and the applications that the customers go through, as well as the full alarm chain where our alarms are routed to our alarm central. So it's really fun to see that everything connects together. Okay, the art of finding your thing. That's what I was giving this as a title, because I think it's so much about giving ourselves a chance to grow with what we have been given from start, and that is a lot of different talents. And why do I want to talk about this? Well, I think this perspective has helped me quite a lot through my years. I think it took some time to realize that my strength could not be compared with anyone else's strength, and I could see that I had some weaknesses as well. And by comparing myself with the weaknesses, I wasn't growing at all. So this is a perspective that I have really chosen, and I would really love to give you the thoughts and my experiences, and see what you will get from that. I also think that today we don't really have that perspective to start off with our strengths and our abilities and our talents. I think that already from school we are fostered into a way of dealing with our weaknesses and our improvement areas, and everyone is pulling into an average. School measures success by how many people actually pass the grade, not how many people that actually reach their potential. And everyone is also measured against the same criteria, even if we have different conditions and different presets to manage that. And of course, that is something that we take with us along the way. And it gets natural to see weaknesses, to see improvement areas, and to work on that. But what if we could get rid of that focus just for a little bit, change our way of looking at how things could be, and instead focus on our talents and see what we could grow them into? Wouldn't that be great? At the end of the day, I think it's all about finding our unique things, which is what our resources are, and give ourselves the opportunity to grow them into something that is our advantage. One thing we can do to also see why this could be a good thing is to look at what successful people have in common. I'm sure all of you could think of people that you, for some reason, think are successful. And one thing that is really, really visible is the passion that you can see in those people. They really, really, truly believe in what they do, and they have this big glow for what they are doing. And that is one thing that is a very strong thing. The other one is self-confidence. They truly believe they have a can-do in this, and they believe they have a capability for this. They also work very hard. A lot. But there is also this honey to the bee, which gives them a sweet flavor. So it's a working hard, but also a lot enjoying what they do. And the last thing is that they have a really, really big focus on what they do. They don't try to do everything. They don't try to be generally good in what they don't have as a focus area. They really focus in on what they want to achieve, and they go 100% for that. I think that is not connecting very well to focusing on your weaknesses. I think these four work very well with actually taking your talents and starting off from them. But it's not, of course, only about success. Of course, we want to be successful in any other way, but also we want to be happy and we want to live a good life, right? I think by doing more of what you like and doing more of what you're good with, you actually live a happier life also. And I think you will enjoy more in your life. My ambition today is to give you my ideas, my experiences, and thoughts in regards to this, and hopefully inspire you to do some exploring on your own. Maybe you find something new that you could utilize. I think it's good to start off with the definition, because we will talk a lot about strength this 45 minutes. And this is the definition that you get from Wikipedia. The quality or state of being strong and the capacity for exertion or endurance, power of resisting attack. That's a little bit weird. My definition tonight is not at all about that. My definition of strength is actually taking its roots from talents. I think all of us are born with different talents and different sets of talents that, if used together, if nourished, if taken care of, if given the possibility to learn and to actually make mistakes and learn again, that talent is what you can grow into what is your unique strength. To understand a little bit more on this, I think it's good to make a reverse and to see what happens if we don't focus on strength. What happens when we focus on weakness? Focusing on weakness might seem like a good idea, because if you're bad at something, then you could probably be quite a bit better. So there would be a good percentage of development. But it would still be quite low leverage on your effort, because you might go from incompetent to mediocre, and you would still not use that as your competitive advantage. You don't have any possibility to differentiate on your weaknesses or your development areas. That's not where you have the ability to be unique. And when working with weaknesses, you actually tell the brain, I'm no good. And when I try, I will still not be the best. And that is kind of stressful for the brain, to always be reminded of, I'm not good. I don't manage this. Of course, that will give quite a low self-confidence and maybe also self-esteem. So there is a lot of negative thoughts coming with working with weaknesses. So the question is, should we just put the weaknesses away forever and forget about them? I don't want to be that drastic. I think there is a limit. I think there is some kind of effort needed. Look at this strength. We are way beyond, and every effort we put into here will just move us in the right direction. And then we have the weakness here. That might be a weakness that stands in our way for reaching our potential on the strength. Imagine there is a person that loves to educate and is really good pedagogue. But the person also has afraid of standing on a scene. So that's kind of a troubling situation, because the person is really good at teaching but doesn't want to be on a stage. So either the person could actually work with standing on a stage and take care of that weakness to the extent that it's manageable. Or the person could also choose to see if there are other contexts where you can use your strength. Maybe you don't want to be on a stage, maybe you don't have to be on a stage. So the point here is that take care of the weakness so that it doesn't hinder you in your development of your strength. Once you have done that, I think we shouldn't focus on the weakness. Everyone has strength, different strength. And by choosing them, by knowing what strength you have and by choosing them, you can actually build your unique added value. Because it all comes down to finding your competitive advantage, which might be something for one person and another thing for another person, and different from time to time. I want to share a little story about myself. As I said, I was quite interested in leadership, and I really wanted to affect my organization. I really had a passion for growing the teams that I've worked with. And I was quite young when I got my first management role. And as I had focused quite a lot on leadership, I had my ideas on what I wanted to do. The problem was that in that management team, there was a lot of engineers that had grown into managers, but was still strong in engineering. And as I had chosen the leadership road, I wasn't really the best engineer and the most competent one when it came to architectural discussions. So I often happen to be in situations where we actually decided for months what architectural solution we were going to choose and which different techniques we were going to use for my team. I felt really uncomfortable being in those situations. And I also started to think, is it really right that I'm here? This is not what I'm good at. I have people in my team that know this much better. And I had to realize that I could either continue to fight and try to catch up in that situation, or I could try to see if I had some other competitive advantages. I chose the second one, which was good. So it was time to change, really, and to let go of the feeling of not being competent. And from that day, I started to actually think about this and started to realize how much I could gain, to realize that I have strength, only they were not the same as the other people's. So one important thing with this is that you really can identify your strength, right? So that's the first step, how to identify your talents so that you can grow them into something that becomes your strength. Have you ever been doing things that you feel gives you a lot of energy? That's probably because you do something that you're good at and really have a passion for. One thing that identifies talents and strengths is that you really get energized. And you are drawn towards doing certain things because it doesn't bother you that you have to work hard. You just want to do it because you feel energized afterwards. I hope you can hear my enthusiasm because this is my passion. But that's also something that you truly speak enthusiastically with other people when you do something that you feel passionate about. I also think that when you do something that you're already quite good at, then you also become a fast learner because you're really, really motivated to get more stuff out of that topic. And you really want to listen, eager to learn more. And you're a fast learner because you're good at it. So it's not hard. You can also notice that people start to ask you about things. You're asked to do something, and probably because that's something that you're good at. So when you start thinking about it, if you haven't done it before, if you start to think about these identifications, I think you can come up with things that you're pretty good at. The last one is the flow. I think it goes the same with energy. Sometimes you just realize that everything works out. And you just work on and everything fits together. You just do things. There is another more practical, maybe more engineering way of doing things. You could actually look at your life as a timeline and realize about looking at what big things happened in your life. Maybe you had big problems. Maybe you built a house. Maybe you got into a new job. Maybe you were helping out with some arrangements on a big party or something like that. All of these things together will give you feelings. How did you feel when doing this? And if you can find the common denominator, what feelings was given to you, then you can also see, okay, when I was in this situation, I had this real feeling of energy that I haven't felt for long. And actually, I had the same feeling when I did this as well. So that could give you a clue of what kind of area you really want to be in. But finding and identifying your strength is unfortunately not enough. There is another aspect to it, and that is the context or the environment, which I believe is critical to really get the potential out of your strength. Having talents in the wrong context would not help you. And one example from my own life is that once I had found my talents and started to build upon them, I had this flow for a lot of years, and I could really see how I added value into my organization. But then there was this transformation in the company, and we got into a completely new setup. And suddenly there was not really any interest for those kind of leadership thoughts. So I struggled quite a bit and tried to work on as I had done for a couple of years. And it didn't really work. The other situation I came into was when I again had a new setup of management team. We were too many people having the same talents actually. So we couldn't really differentiate, which was also obviously a problem because we lacked competence in different areas, but we were too many being strong in the same areas. So it was really hard to find what unique value I could add. I actually got out of this problem with a solution, maybe a little bit of luck actually. But what happened was that I found and started to network with other people that was far away from an organizational perspective, and started to talk about my leadership principles and what I wanted to do. And they were actually really interested because they were lacking that exact competence, which was really good for me. So they started to invite me and started to ask for support. So then I could again see how I could fit in and add value to those. And I think what I'm trying to say here is that I find a microenvironment in the big company. I found an environment, a context where I could actually grow my potential. But that experience also taught me the importance of the context. And when I then moved into my new job, I really had that in mind, to find a context where I could leeway on my potential. I also want to say a few words on how to apply these thoughts when it comes to leadership, because it's quite close to my heart. I think when you are in a leading position, focusing on strength and focusing on people's abilities rather than what they can develop is a good way to grow your team, to grow your individuals as well. I think by boosting everyone on what they are good at, and also by giving them reason to do it even more, is a good way to build their self-confidence and self-esteem. And with the same reasoning that I did for myself by removing what is hindering you, I think it's also very important to be specific with your staff. What is actually a hinder and what is a weakness that doesn't really mean anything? Be specific on what might be in their way for reaching their potential. If you can build a team with unique strength, it's super. Of course, you might have people that are alike, but I think the set of talents that we have will still make us very unique. And in different situations, we might still add different value. So let everyone be unique in their strength. And also, I think by having this mindset, we get rid of the competition, in teams, and we actually let people grow on their own. At the end of the day, no one is good at everything, we know that, but I think everyone is great at something. So we just have to find this great within everyone. There is one thing I think is a little bit of a pitfall, and that is if you forget to focus that it's your own unique strength. Because it's very easy to look into other people that you see obvious strengths, and then you want to copy that because you want it so much. So you try to convince yourself that it's also your strength and start to build upon that. But it's really, really important to be genuine to yourself and really find what is my competitive advantage here. You can see it quite obvious when you look at big companies that announce the new CEO. And you can see that they really pick the CEO based on that people's strength and based on the context that the company is. Maybe you have a company that is growing, then they pick a very entrepreneurial CEO. Maybe the company is going through a quite tough transition or maybe downsizing. Then there are other strengths they choose the CEO for. I think that's really, really obvious. And that's also quite important to remember once you are offered a new job. And you look at the person that is before you, and you look at the shoes that the person is leaving, and they are quite big, and you are stepping into those shoes. And don't try to copy the person that you are replacing, because you are obviously given the job because of your strength that someone else has seen. And that might even be better, because that is what you are doing best, your strength. If you choose to have this mindset just for a little bit, what will be the gain? I think the gain will, of course, be a much bigger percentage of succeeding in reaching your potential. I think also that you will have a more calm life, because you will tell the brain that you are good at something, and you give the brain a possibility to grow from something that is already a satisfying thing. So more harmony in life would also be something that I believe will come from this. A quick recap. Take care of the weaknesses, but just enough so they don't stand in your way. Don't give them too much room, because they will never be the potential for you anyway. Don't give them too much energy. Just make sure that they are not in the way. And then focus on your talents, on your unique talents. Let them grow into something that is your unique brand. But also, don't forget, make sure that you get the opportunity to act in an environment where you can actually have a good leverage on your strength. Because it's easier to change context than to change strength. With this, I hope I have managed to deliver on my ambition, to give you some inspiration, and maybe planted a seed of thoughts that you could start exploring on your own and see what strength you could build upon. And who knows, maybe you find new talents. Thank you very much.